are back. And Judge, I'll tell you what, that was a real interesting talk with Coach Westerberg.
Well, I thought that it would provide an interesting perspective into where Allen High School's coming from, what their thought process was. Of course, they were kind enough to let us come out there to interview them, and so I didn't want to get too rough with them, I guess. But, I kept coming back to the fact that, I understand you prepare each week for each team because District 8 5A is tough, but the Plano Wildcats are particularly tough. The Plano schools are particularly tough. Let's address that. And so I felt like I kind of pushed them a little bit to answer that question and take that into stride, because this game is not going to be a walk for anybody. Plano has got to come out with the same intensity and keep that intensity up if they're going to duel with Allen, and Allen has the same challenge ahead of them as well.
Okay, we got a game coming up this week. Now, Plano West picked up a great, and I mean a great win over South Garland High the past week. I mean, Plano West really had to dig in the last 6 minutes. Well, they had to dig in the whole game, but I mean the last 4 to 6 minutes, they really had a gut check on their hands. Plano West with another tough one this week.
Boy, they really do. North Mesquite has put up over 13 touchdowns in 3 games already, and King Davis has had a 58% percentage, or a pass completion percentage, and has just had a pretty darn good season so far. And so, yeah, Plano West. What I liked is when I was at the Booster Club meeting, when we were at the Booster Club meeting the other night, was that they really run the same scheme, Kevin, offensively and defensively.
Okay, and then another too, this may be apples and oranges, but if Plano West could ever make the kind of improvement they made from week 1 to week 2, from week 2 to week 3, they are going to be okay. Now, I say apples and oranges because Arlington Martin was one heck of a football team. Before all is said and done, they just might be playing for a state championship this year. Clearly, they're much better than, let's say, South Garland. But that does not really deter from the fact that Plano West showed an awful lot of improvement from week 1 to week 2.
Well, what I was excited about was the fact that the Plano West defense, and Kevin, you pointed this out in the broadcast that night, they maintained just a great deal of poise when their back was up against the red zone. South Garland had 3 opportunities to go up and take the lead, even in the last 2 minutes of the game. And the Plano West defense didn't bend, even when, the poor defensive end that got called for the face mask. And, we looked at the replay on that and saw that he was just trying to tackle him. The kid had run past him, and he was in the air, and his hand caught his face mask. He didn't do it intentionally, but that penalty gave them another set of 4 downs.
Sure did.
Which could have been disastrous, and Plano West did not lose their poise. And that's what I liked about that game, was that the Plano West offense and the Plano West defense didn't lose any poise, maintained their poise in the sight of adversity and diversity, and was able to retain their victory.
Well, I will agree with you here. I never felt so bad as I did for a Plano West tackler who all of a sudden you just react to things. He saw a guy going by him, and he just tried to get a hand up to get a part of his body anywhere. Just happened to get the face mask. All right, I'll tell you what, we got a great weekend we want to recap coming up here. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to go to an interview with Russell Maryland, a former Dallas Cowboy who we had an opportunity to visit with and really had a good time with. Let's check out Russell Maryland. Welcome back to the Haggard Ranch, everyone, and welcome back to the kickoff for the Gridiron Club of Dallas. Right now, we've got a guest who I guess needs no introduction, but we'll introduce him anyway. Russell Maryland, who we just, I guess, were trying to ask, how does a guy from Chicago end up in Miami? And you were giving a few jokes about that. But, Russell, in all seriousness, what are you doing with yourself these days? And, what are you, doing here tonight?
Well, I am just here to partake in the festivities of the Gridiron Club here in Dallas, and it's a special occasion to kick off this 2011 football season. So all the excitement is all around, and I'm caught up in it. So, but as far as what I'm doing with myself these days, I'm just basically just caring for kids. I got my 14-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old kid, and there with my wife, and just taking care of the family, just kind of laying low a little bit before the next best thing, before I figure out what it is I want to do when I grow up.
You know, you mentioned something that's been a theme of ours this evening, a 14-year-old, 11-year-old, a 7-year-old, very, very impressionable age, that kind of stuff. When you were that age, who were some of the people who really influenced you to go in the direction you did?
Oh, wow. When I was a teenager and younger, well, really all throughout my childhood, the main two people that were in my household, my mom and dad. My dad worked for Chrysler Corporation for 30 years. My mom worked for the City of Chicago Police Department for 30 years. So they were hardworking. They left early in the morning. They came home late at night, and I saw that day in and day out. And didn't really realize it at the time. You know, I never had any wants or needs and didn't realize it at the time. But looking back at it as a 42-year-old dad myself, I can see and realize all the hard work that they put in just to keep me and my brothers well fed, and they did a good job.
You know, one thing I'll ask you, then I'm going to turn this over to the judge because he's got some good questions for you too. You went off to Miami at the time when Miami had the reputation. Now, I'm not going to say it's a bad reputation, but as Benny Blades once said, we were the kind of guys who like to go in people's backyards and turn over their trash cans. In other words, kind of a we're going to get it done type attitude. Well, what attracted you to Miami?
Well, you know what? I think really and truly the story is, for me, it's not necessarily what attracted me to Miami. It was really all about the choices that I had at the time. And believe it or not, didn't have many choices. The only school that recruited me actively and offered me a scholarship at the time was Indiana State. So I could have been a Indiana State Sycamore. But it didn't.
You and Larry Bird.
That's right, me and Larry Bird. We could have been the best thing coming out of Indiana State. However, my father, he had other plans for me unbeknownst to me, and he had some things in the fire, and he was kind of hoping and praying that Miami would come through because they had been recruiting me, but they fell off to try to go for some other blue chip prospects in the Chicago area back then in '86. So Miami was my second and last choice, and it was really by the grace of God that I got the last scholarship that year in Miami.
Russell, there's a rumor that you've got a foundation that you're beginning or that you're working with. Can you tell us a little bit about that foundation that you're working with or trying to start up?
Well, actually, I had a foundation in the Chicago area called the Russell Maryland Foundation. Since 1993, we've been putting on clinics for kids, free clinics, and we had at the time one of the largest free clinics for kids in urban cities in America. And did that for 12 years. When I retired from football in 2002, I came here and was part of a foundation called Digging for Dragons Foundation. And what we wanted to do is try to and help to subsidize some of the programs that were being lost. You know, with education and all the cutbacks, especially in the last couple of years, we thought that a couple of concerned parents kind of sat around the table and said, hey, we need to do something. So we started a 501c3 called Digging for Dragons in the South Lake, Texas area. So I've been working with that for a good long time. And also I've been a part of the Cowboys of Color Museum. It's a museum that pays homage to the African American, Hispanic American, Native American cowboys of the Old West. I didn't realize that over 30% of the Old West is made up of those cowboys, and it's it's a fact that you might not hear on a day-to-day basis. So I was helping to promote that foundation and that museum for a long time. So I've taken part of a couple of things. I don't have any one foundation that I'm starting at the time, but the next thing that I do start, I want it to be in education, and I like it to be somewhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, helping kids.
Well, I tell you, Russell, that's something that I do. I'm a justice of the peace here in Collin County, and 3 weeks out of the month I hear truancy court and juvenile court, and it's all about getting on the child's level, working with the child and the family, and I think it's honorable that you're doing that. And I'll tell you, if you start doing that, let me know. Herschel Walker and I are working on a foundation right now to help children who need treatment but can't afford the treatment, and there's no state funding for it. And so there's a couple ideas we've kicked around. We were hoping he was going to win The Apprentice because those winnings were going to go into the foundation, but we know what happened there. So, but if you start something, please let Coach Brents know, because I'd love to help you out with that, be a part of that. We're
I'm hoping I'm fairly ingrained in the Collin County community, and I think we could be very helpful.
Well, definitely, Judge. I mean, there's a whole myriad of opportunities to help young men and women, especially in these times. And any good ideas will ultimately become great ideas when you're working with kids. So, yeah, let me know. Maybe something good could come out of it.
Absolutely. Now, let me change the page for you for a minute. We're here this evening for the National Football Foundation. A lot of young coaches, young athletes are going to see this. You've had a great deal of success. You, like me, had the opportunity to watch two parents work very, very hard, provide for their family, not realize the sacrifices they made as children growing up, not until we were adults. What advice can you give, first of all, a young high school athlete coming up through the ranks right now in how to help and be a part of the community and be a strong contributor, and then also the young coaches as well? What kind of advice can you give both those sets of folks?
Well, on both sides, first and foremost, and it's been a mark of my career, is to work hard. And whatever you do, work hard. Next, to follow up with that, work hard at doing something for good. I mean, we could always find things to do bad in, and it's easy when you hang around with the bad crowd. But if you work hard in whatever it is that you like, whether it's football, whether it's baseball, whether it's your studies, or whether it's singing or whatever, just to work hard in it, something good will come out of it. But also do it for good. Do it for the good of the community, not only for the good of your family, but the good of the community, and ultimately you may be able to do some good for this for this region and the world. So just to work hard and do it for good. That'll be my top two things to tell kids to do.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's great advice coming from Russell, Maryland, who's had a great deal of success. Kevin, I'll let you take it up and wrap it up for us.
Well, I'll tell you what, we will wrap it up, but thank you very much for taking the time. And just got to ask you real quick, was Coach Tuberville really as great an assistant as he always told me he was?
Well, I tell you what, Tuberville, he'll tell you he's great, but the bottom line is he is a great coach. I mean, I've known Coach Tuberville, and I'm going to tell you a story. When I got down to the University of Miami for my official visit, who picks me up? Coach Tubbs. He picks me up at the airport. Him and Coach Wanstead, Dave Wanstead. And so I tell you what, I've seen him come from a graduate assistant in the 80s at the University of Miami and ascending to the highest of the heights and, the 12-0 seasons at Auburn. And I know he's going to do some great things at Tech. So I'm waiting to see him do those good things.
Thank you for taking the time to visit with us.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll be back with more of our program right after this.